So far on this channel, I've tried to cover different types of manga, ranging from popular series like Attack on Titan and Chainsaw Man, to Solonin, which doesn't even have an anime adaptation. Today, I want to talk about a series that, from my view anyway, is still overlooked, but I think has the potential to become a mainstream hit with its anime adaptation on the horizon. I can say that if any series has both the potential to reach a wider audience, and frankly is deserving of it, it'd be Witch Hat Atelier. This series has gained some popularity within manga reading circles, but for those unaware, the story follows protagonist Coco, a 10-year-old girl who loves magic and has dreamt forever of becoming a witch. In her world, however, only those born with magical abilities can become witches. But a male witch named Keudae meets her, and after witnessing him use magic, attempts it on her own. And here's some brief spoilers for the very first chapter. She unfortunately ends up transforming her mother into stone. This sets up the story for her to try and learn magic and eventually turn her mother back. One of the biggest draws of this manga is how it manages to feel both very familiar yet very fresh at the same time. It is a fantasy series in a very traditional sense, yet manages to stand out on its own, as it is set in a world more reminiscent of Western fantasy works. If you're familiar with stuff like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Chronicles of Narnia, and The Neverending Story, I think Witch Hat will satisfy a similar itch. Also, the author herself noted all of those books as inspirations. To sum up, it's a very Western-influenced series. However, Japanese influences are still prominent, the main being Hayao Miyazaki. The world combines elements from his works with Western ones and creates a world that is one of the best I've seen in a while from a manga or anime, both from a visual standpoint and a world-building one. Out of stuff I've read or watched recently, this is a series that has a world that I actually want to explore and learn more about. Which brings me to the use of magic. Magic is described as a force harnessed through runes drawn with conjuring ink, and people trained in the use of magic are called witches. The basics of which are that seals are known as glyphs, and they are composed of 3 parts: seals, signs, rings. In the simplest ways of explaining the magic, it's shown with drawings of ink coming to life. It's pretty cool. The magic is complex enough that it would be considered a hard magic system, as people often say these days, but is also not made to be as overly complicated and doesn't lose a sense of wonder. Additionally, regarding the use of magic in Witch Hat, there's the fact that Coco initially shouldn't have been a witch in the first place, and later whether her choice to pursue magic is worth it and despite the love she has for it. This becomes a recurring topic in the series as the restrictions in place on what people are allowed to do with magic begin to be revealed more and more. While only 68 chapters have been released so far, character development has exceeded my expectations. I'm under the impression that there's still plenty to go, but I feel like the manga has managed to cover quite a bit so far. I think Coco has made for a great protagonist, and I love her enthusiasm for magic, but also love how that becomes challenged later on, as she questions whether any of it was worth it and its effect on other people. Other standout characters for me would be Agot and Keudae. Agot initially struck me as just being cold and distant and to fit in the Sasuke-type character of the story, but as the story developed, she began to show more sympathy to the other witches and shows more of a heart as she starts to focus a little less on herself. Keudae is still a mystery to me, and that's part of what I like about him. He clearly cares about Coco and the others, but also battles with his own vested interests in matters. Won't go into too much detail because of spoilers, but I can't wait to see what they do with him. As the title indicates, I think Witch Hat Atelier has the potential to go from a decently popular series in manga reading circles to being mainstream once the anime is finally released. Mainly because the series takes a lot of elements that are familiar but also stands out amongst the current anime by a lot. One thing that's interesting is the fact that this is a manga originally published in a seinen magazine. Despite that, the manga doesn't feel like it fits in with the more common examples of seinen manga such as Vinland Saga or Berserk. Many might peg Witch Hat as a children's manga just because of its style, but it manages to appeal to an older demographic because it covers adult themes but not in a way that is inappropriate for a younger audience. I think that is another reason this series is a breath of fresh air and why it would be able to appeal to so many people. Not only does it show that categories like seinen or shonen don't really say much, let alone determine the quality of a series, but it also shows that a series can be highbrow and digestible for children as well as adults. The best way I can think of Witch Hat Atelier is that it's wholesome yet very mature at the same time. This is not an easy balance to achieve, yet it works, and I think that's part of why the series can get big. Most people can enjoy it regardless of age. Also, I really just love the art style by itself. I know people point to Kentaro Miura or Inyo Asano's art as being some of the best in manga, and I don't disagree that they have great art, but this has its own style that I don't know if I'd say it's to the same level, but something about it is very aesthetically pleasing. All in all, I strongly recommend you read this series, because then you can say that you read it before it was cool.